All right, everyone, how are we doing? My name is Dave. I am with the admissions team at the Kornberg School of Dentistry. If you have not done so already, please use the QR code or the link on the screen to sign in. This lets the committee know that you are still interested in Temple, whether it's this year, next year, or last year, to be completely fair. But with that being said, we are going to go over a bunch of information. It won't take long, to be honest with you. That's why we're starting a little late, because we are going to make sure that we answer as many of your questions as possible. Okay. With that being said, I know there have been a number of questions that have already been thrown through, and I will answer many of them. So if you go through the questions that were presented, some of those questions will not receive answers because they're in the presentation itself. It's not that we're ignoring you. We're just trying to be comprehensive, okay? We do have a good group with us tonight, and I appreciate all of you and all of your efforts of trying to pursue advanced standing programs in general, nonetheless, here at Temple University. So without waiting any longer, we're going to just jump right in, okay? So this year, the 25-26 application cycle, interviews and bench tests have been mostly completed. The interviews as of right now are done. That does not mean that the committee will not reopen interviews. I know this is not the news that any of you want to hear. However, this is where Temple stands apart from other dental schools because we're going to tell you what's going on, right? But those interviews have been completed. The bench test is in the near future for those that have interviewed. All of that being said, it is not outside of the committee's purview to reopen interviews and host another bench test. Now, I also don't want to be the person of false hope. Is that likely? Not in my experience. However, given the fact that Temple has increased their advanced standing size from 10 to 20 seats, we never know, because we know that all of you apply to many schools hoping for multiple or any opportunities. So with that being said, it is possible that interviews can be reopened and a second bench test could take place. That is yet to be determined, and we do not know. We will keep everyone posted, and we will have another Zoom call to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is where we're at. Because the thing that Temple prides themselves in, and I make sure that our team prides ourselves in, is making sure that you as applicants know what's going on so you can make informed decisions. With that, I want everyone to be able to take away from this conversation, if that does not happen, to be prepared for next cycle if you do not get opportunities at other dental schools, because that's possible too. I don't want that for any of you, but it is the reality. Okay. CAAPID will open next March. And I do recommend the quick guide. That data is given by the admissions offices to ADIA, and then they sadly make you buy it. I assure you, I don't get a commission on that quick guide. But with that being said, it's a useful resource because that information is legitimately from the Office of Admissions at all of the dental schools that provide that information. Okay, so again, I want to be very clear. As of right now, the interviews and the future bench test, those candidates have been selected. And I can give you guys the numbers too. There were over 1,300 total applicants for Temple this year. Almost 950 of those applicants had completed their applications for review. There were about 125 or 130 applicants that were selected for interviews, which also were given the invitation to bench test. We are yet to determine the final number of those that will actually sit for the bench test. So that's why we don't know what's going to happen moving forward. But those numbers can dictate to you that it is extremely competitive. And we know this, and that's why we want to have sessions like this. Okay. If you have to go through the reapplication process, well, then some of you may know this, some of you may not. But it is important to make sure that we know what we're doing if we do have to do that. And these links and these images are on CAAPID's website. So all you have to do is review them and make sure you know what that looks like when it comes to reapplying. We're going to go over in a minute the biggest things that Temple is looking for specifically. Okay. I'm sure all of you are aware of these ideas if you've reapplied. If you have not reapplied, this is a good slide for you and something that you should research on CAAPID's website. Let's just go over what took place already, okay? You all applied for the most part from March to June 15th. We start reviewing applications in May of every year. I'm sorry, that year is not updated on this May. Of course, it was May of 2025. We start reviewing applications in the sense of what's completed so that we can send out our $75 supplemental fee. It's very simple. You pay $75. It's a processing fee. You answer a few disclosure questions and everything is good. All of you have done that, or many of you have done that, I should say. All right. From May through July, the committee reviews the applications up and beyond the July 15th deadline. If you apply on July 15th, which is ill-advised, but if you do that, your application will be reviewed and you can receive an interview opportunity. July and August is when we start sending out interview invitations. The bench test is typically at the end of August or in early September. And then we try and send out our first round offers within 3 to 5 weeks after the bench test because we have to grade a lot of those preps. And there's many preps, and we're not going to talk about the preps because that is only given to that information is only given to candidates that are invited to the bench test, and all of that information is given to them 2 or 3 days before the bench test takes place, because we also want to be fair to everyone and not give anyone a competitive advantage over another candidate. All right, this is our timeline. After those first round acceptances go out in late September or early October, we will see what happens when it comes to candidates that were accepted and paying deposits. And if candidates don't pay deposits, that's a good sign for all of you who are still waiting, because that could be something that the committee looks at and says, we want to reopen interviews and another bench test because we're not comfortable with what we have based on what we've seen. So that's why this is an open-ended conversation, and we're trying to relay that to you, to give you that information to say, listen, it is not a great opportunity as of the moment, but it is not over. But at the same time, we need to continue to prepare for next cycle if that's what happens. All right, I hope that makes sense. Moving on. What do we do at Temple and what do we offer? Well, everyone is very aware, I'm sure, of our 2-year advanced standing program, which now has 20 seats. Our class that started in April of this year was our biggest advanced standing cohort ever at Temple Dental. We were given approval by CODA the accrediting body of dental schools in the United States, last September, that said we could expand our program from 10 to 20 seats. So that's great news. We have 20 seats. I know we're not Boston, but we're doing what we can because we want to support as many of you as possible. All right. Those students will enter the third year class of the traditional 4-year DMD. So you will add on to the 140 students that are in that cohort. You do have your summer training that will take place from April until about August, but then you will jump into the clinic with that rising D3 class and you will fulfill your requirements as necessary. That being said, also, we do offer a 3-year advanced standing program. The availability of this varies year over year. And unfortunately, it's based on the fact of current 4-year DMD students who are unsuccessful in their first year from matriculating to the second year. If those gaps happen, we fill those with international dentists and they jump into the D2 class. Yes, you will do a year of didactics with preclinical training. And to be fair, and I think there's a slide about this, and if not, the cost is relative. I think that extra year may be $40,000 more than doing the 2-year program. It's not nothing, but it's also not insurmountable. All right. If you do get the opportunity to interview, but the committee does not run a bench test in a second round, you would still be eligible for the 3-year program if seats are available. So that's why I keep saying this is not over. It may not be the brightest prospect of what you're looking at, but it is not done. And that's, again, why we have these sessions, because Temple wants you to know what's going on. All right, if that is the case, we're going to send out emails that will have the subject of my admission status. If you get that email, it's a short survey. All you have to do is fill it out and let us know if you're interested or not. If you say yes, the committee is going to start with those candidates first in any sort of waitlisted situation. If you say no, they're going to withdraw your app and wish you the best. Please be a great dentist. If you don't respond at all, they're not really sure what your status is. Okay. Moving on. What is Temple looking for? I'm going to emphasize this slide a lot. All right, because many of the questions that you're going to throw at me, which I see 30 of already, are going to pertain to this idea. You need to have passed part 1 or part 2 of the national boards or the integrated boards. It doesn't matter which. The committee will look at how many times you've taken any of these board exams. Because again, remember, there were almost 950 applications that were qualified, but the committee has luxury of choice. So I'm not saying that someone who took boards multiple times is going to be disqualified. However, that being said, they're going to go with candidates that understood the exam and were successful with it in 1 or 2 challenges, whether that be the part 1, part 2, or the integrated, because they have that ability. If you applied and did not take the boards until recently or after the deadline, that could be part of the reason that you did not get an invitation, regardless of everything else that we're about to talk about. Because they want to see completed applications with these items at the time of review, not pending. All right. Moving on to TOEFL. They like to see scores of 100 plus. That is a preference. That is not a requirement. If they feel that someone is a good fit and they have a 98 on their TOEFL, they could get an opportunity. It just depends. We do like to see a 3.0 or better from the dental school that you graduated from. However, on your ECE evaluation, that could go as low as maybe a 2.5, depending on where you went to dental school, what your experience was, and where you went to dental school. Okay, so there's a lot of factors there. Some of the grading scales that you all came through could have been out of 10. It could have been out of 8. It could have been out of 5. And ECE does a good evaluation to give us a barometer of how you did. The course by course descriptions with your grades are what the committee are going to look at. That's why we like ECE and we don't prefer the WES evaluation, because the ECE evaluation is a little more realistic. We found in the past that the WES evaluation inflates GPAs a lot. So we know we're going to take that into consideration. When it comes to those first 3 bullet points, my recommendation to all of you is to satisfy those for all of the schools that you're looking for or looking to apply to or have applied to. Meeting those benchmarks are going to be massive, because that's where the school may draw lines in the sand and say, why should we interview someone with a 97 TOEFL that's equivalent to someone else with 103 TOEFL, where they have, and just for argument's sake, identical backgrounds? Because they can, and they will. All right. So those benchmarks, please, please try your best to satisfy them. Okay. Don't take TOEFL every 3 weeks. Make sure you're ready for it when you take it. Because if they see that you've taken TOEFL 8 times, that's not going to be a good look. Similar to the number of board attempts that you take. Now I'm going to emphasize on this 4th bullet point the most. And this is what Temple really is going to put a lot of emphasis on. Your experience. Yes, they will prefer US experience. If you are not in the US, that does not disqualify you. That does not put you at a disadvantage. It just is a different kind of categorization. But we need to see what you've done. And then through the interview and bench test process, we'll see where your skills are based on what Temple expects. But please, please, please keep working with your hands. I'm probably going to go through about 15 questions without fail. What does Temple most look for when it comes to advanced standing international dentist applicants? And the number one thing that I'm going to tell you outside of the benchmarks I just discussed is your experience. They want to see that you can do restorations, bridges, veneers, crowns, restorative dentistry. They want to see it. The more of it, the better. If you're in the US or in Canada, of course, you're not having a license or don't have a license. That's why you're pursuing these programs. Being an assistant, an EFTA, or a hygienist, to keep your hands warm, to show that you have these skills, knowledge, understanding of the North American system. That's beneficial. And I can tell you there is not preference to candidates that are in the US or Canada versus you practicing in your home country. We've had students from South America, Africa, Asia, who had a ton of experience and never been to the US with the exception of their bench test, but they had so much experience that they were more than qualified for our program, and then they were successful in our program. All right. Being chairside is the biggest thing. I know there's information out there that says, do a master in public health. It'll help you with your CAAPID application. I apologize to you if any of you are in that type of program right now. That is not a Temple advantage. It helps you understand the healthcare system. It helps you get understanding of the US and North American educational system and how that works. But it does not actually show our committee that you are a strong candidate for our program in this advanced standing opportunity. It's about experience. So if you've just recently moved to the US, find your way into a dental office. And when I say this experience, I want to be very, very clear. It is not observership. It's working in an office, it's being chairside, it's having instruments in your hands, and being in and or near patient mouths. All right, that's the experience that Temple's looking for. It's extremely important. I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay, I've probably spent like 6 minutes on this slide, which is probably too much, but I want to make sure that I slam that point home, because it is absolutely imperative that you all know that. Okay, so moving on. If you didn't sign in before the event started, please sign in now. My email address is on this page. I will ask all of you to please wait until the end of this Q&A session to just start blasting me emails. I'm happy to be here for you and support you in any way that I can and answer your questions. But please make your questions like relevant to the scenario of what we just talked about and to the process that we just talked about. All right. Excuse me. I have something caught. Excuse me. Okay. Who's ready to jump into questions? Okay, good. Here we go. Yes, does the committee prefer US experience with advanced standing applicants? Yes, but that's not a requirement. Your experience can come from your home country as well. Will the admissions committee still continue to review applications through the cycle? Yes. Have most of the interview invitations been already sent out? Yes. That does not mean it's closed. We will tell you when it's closed. What qualities or experiences make applicants stand out? I just mentioned that on my last slide. I'll go back to it even. Can I? Yeah, that's what we're looking for, everybody. I know it's hard, but the other thing that I'll tell you, actually, before I move on, of the 125 or 130 people that were invited for interview, and then close to 950 applicants that were invited, or I'm sorry, that applied, I can honestly tell you that there are at least 200 applicants that 100% qualify for what Temple's looking for. But we cannot interview and bench test everyone. I mentioned Boston before. It's a big program. They have 100 seats. We have 20. We cannot interview and bench test everyone. It's just the nature of math. So I apologize for those of you who meet all of these benchmarks and will put questions into the chat that's saying, I have this already. What should I do? Just keep doing what you're doing and explore schools, because that's the nature of it. We cannot accommodate all of you as much as we want to. What advice would you give applicants in this cycle to prepare for success if invited for interview? Know your stuff and bring your A game. You guys are dentists. We expect nothing less. Treat it like a job interview, because the job is what you want. If this program and the ability to gain licensure in the US is what you want, treat it similarly. Okay. Is Temple done with interviews? Not necessarily, but please don't be too hopeful. But it is not closed. We will let you know when it's closed. I'd like to ask about the curriculum design. In what ways does the program ensure that advanced standing students not only build strong clinical skills, but also grow in areas like research, public health, and leadership during their time at Temple? That's a pretty fully loaded question. I'm going to answer it very briefly. All right. Listen, Temple has the reputation of putting out in the world very competent leader and public health masters. That's what they do. You wouldn't have applied to Temple if you did not have that inclination. All right. How they do that is through what they do. I'm going to be the first to tell you guys, I'm not a dentist. I have 2 business degrees. And I just support this industry and I support healthcare. So I can't necessarily go into the specifics of that. But what I can tell you in my 7 years at Temple, that we are going to make sure that we have competent clinicians who will provide care to people who need it most, or who request it, or who can afford it even in that capacity, because this is the United States. They like capitalism. And dentistry is not healthcare for whatever reason. I didn't make that decision. I live here. Okay. So we will build around all of those qualities, and it will be delivered to you in different ways. But in this program, because of lack of didactics, you need to understand that we're teaching you to be clinicians. We're going to touch on those other things like leadership and public health for sure. But that is not the focus. We want to make sure that you are competent clinicians for the oral public health of the US. Okay. Thank you for that question. You're welcome. Does Canadian dental experience hold the same value as US experience? Yes, I did mention US. It says it on my slide right now. We'll take North American experience for sure. Do not think that that holds you back if you are in Canada and you're working as an assistant or a hygienist or an EFTA or something similar. That's fine. We still just want to see what your experience is and what your exposure is and what kind of knowledge that you've gained in that experience. What's the first thing that admissions committee looks for in a CV? Experience. I'm interested in learning the difference in the selection process for the 2-year, 3-year program. Cool. I'll go over this again. Listen, guys, the 3-year program is an additional option. It doesn't always happen. The 2-year 20 seats are for sure. Again, if a D1 student in the traditional 4-year program is unsuccessful moving into the 2nd year of dental school for whatever reason, that opens up a vacancy for an international dentist to take the 3-year seat. Of course, our admissions committee for the 4-year program does not admit people because they're going to be unsuccessful. That is not our intention. That is not our goal, but all of us know that life happens. If those seats become available, then the committee will go after filling that seat with an international dentist. That being said, a reminder, if you have not at least interviewed, you are not considered for that. So if you have not received an interview invitation or a future interview invitation, you will not be eligible for the 3-year program. If you interview and miss a bench test or a bench test is not offered, you can be eligible for a 3-year seat. I hope that makes sense. Thank you. In regard to scholarships and financial aid, what does the school help us apply after acceptance? Your financial aid is up to your status as a U.S. Resident or citizen and what you're eligible for. There are no scholarships in the advanced standing program. You will need to find funding on your own for this program. Okay, cool. I love the opening to this question. Good morning. You are somewhere else in the world, and that's amazing. In applicants with similar academic backgrounds, what subtle factors help the committee decide who will be a better fit for the program? Well, that's where the interview and the bench test are going to separate candidates that the committee likes versus those that the committee will have reservations about. All right, so it's a comprehensive review. Now, they want to see in your application that you check the boxes and or fulfill the requirements as necessary. If you do not, well, then they're going to move on to the next applicant. If you do, and then you interview and bench test, they're going to compare you against the other applicants that interviewed and bench tested. So it's a very holistic review that is going to take everything that you've presented and make sure that we can be as fair as possible to everyone who we feel is going to be the best fit for Temple. Very good question. Thank you. What is the estimated cost of attendance for the 2026 incoming class? I would say that the tuition is going to be roughly about $105,000 US annually, with potential 3 to 6% increases. And there are also other fees that are associated with that, not including your room and board or your housing. So I don't want to give a specific number because there's lots of variation, because Philadelphia can be a very accommodating city when it comes to living expenses and things like that. But you would probably want to secure at least $150,000 a year for each year. But that number can come down based on what's happening in Philadelphia, rental prices and things like that. But don't quote me to any of those numbers. I won't be held liable for them. I'm giving you estimates based on the question that was given. Thank you, and very relevant. Is Temple conducting separate interviews for bench test for 2 and 3 year advanced standing programs respectively? No, that is not the case. If you are reviewed for the 2-year program and you are not selected for the 20 seats that are there, you are automatically considered for the 3-year seats. You do not have to apply for both. You will be considered for both if you are given the interview and or bench test opportunity. Good question. Thank you. Wow, we got 23 minutes. We're going to get through a lot of these questions, everybody. Oh man, this is my favorite question. My question is about Philadelphia. Oh boy, here we go. It's a historic city. How does the location enhance the learning experience? For example, in terms of community outreach, volunteering, or patient population. Listen, Philadelphia needs you, all of you, when it comes to oral health care. We need you, all of you. We can't accept all of you, sadly, but we need you. Philadelphia is historic, and Philadelphia is awesome. It's my home. It's a great place. But yes, there's a lot of outreach that needs to be done. There are absolutely volunteering opportunities. You're going to be required to do both in order to graduate if you're a student at Temple. And the patient population is vast. the 2024 graduating class, let me think. That was about 153 students. They had met with almost 200,000 patients and conducted over 65,000 individual procedures. We're busy. No one here is going to have to go out and hunt patients. They're coming through the door because, again, we need you. Great question. Thank you. If you have other questions about Philadelphia, I'm happy to answer them. It's a great place. Does the school provide feedback so we can find our strengths and weaknesses? Listen, the answer to that question is yes, but you have to remember that we are an admissions team of like 3. We will get back to you as soon as we can. The reason for this call is to tell you what Temple is looking for. I'm going to put this up again. If you don't meet these benchmarks, you're not going to be considered. Period. We want to ask you all to be due diligent and do your homework to see where you fall when it comes to all of this. All right? We're here to help you. If you do send us an email, please be patient. Give us a week, maybe 10 days to get back to you if it comes to that, because again, we are a very, very small team here at Temple. For those of you who know, we do respond, but it may take us a little time. Please don't send us multiple requests via voicemail on the phone or email, because that slows our response time for everyone. If you email us or send us or call us and leave a voice message, we will get back to you. Please be patient. I know a lot of the dental schools don't, but we will. So please be patient. But feedback will be given when available. Okay? Hold on, everyone. I'm about to lose power. Okay, cool. My cable was not fully plugged in. Hold on. Let me ensure that. I don't want us to be disconnected for any reason. I'm so sorry. Hold on one second, everyone. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I want to make sure we don't get disconnected and we throw everybody off the call today. That would be bad form. Okay, cool. So going back to our questions here. You guys aren't seeing my screen anymore. Let me make sure I can share my screen. Okay, good. Thank you all. Sorry for the delay. Does the dental school provide, sorry, just answered that question. Are they almost done with interview invitations? Yeah, they're probably done. But that doesn't mean anything, because if people show up to the bench test and they don't have hands and the committee doesn't like them, guess what? They're going to reopen that stuff, because they know that all of you are still interested. That's why signing in is so important, because guess what? They might only invite people who are attending this session and signed in. I don't know the answer to that, but it's possible. Will multiple attempts on the integrated boards not be accepted? No, it's accepted. If you've passed, it's accepted. Is it preferential if you've taken the boards 5 times versus someone who's taken it once or twice? No, but they will look at you either way. How many interview invites will the school be sending this year? We've invited about 125 to 130 already. If we invite more, then we invite more. How are the advanced standing students involved in the mission of serving diverse and underserved communities? That's what our clinic does. The majority of our patients, the vast majority of our patients are underserved and diverse. It's what we do. There is no question of how we do it. It's a question of when we do it, which is every day. Does the admissions team provide feedback? I just answered that question. If an applicant has multiple attempts on the boards due to life experiences, is that going to be held against you? No, not necessarily. Life happens to us all. We understand how that goes. We just need to know what that experience was and what actually happens. Additionally, what qualities or evidence of growth do you look for when deciding to invite candidates? Experience. I can't emphasize this enough, everyone. It's about experience. Many of these advanced standing programs start in January of each year. Temple starts at the end of April. What that means is that we have 3.5 less months to teach you the Temple way versus what those programs do to teach you their way. That's why we have a bench test, so that we can set that bar. And that 3.5 months that you're in pre-clinic, they're going to give you a crash course that our D1 and D2 students get in 2 years over pre-clinic. Because we know you're dentists and we respect you. That actually also saves you 3 months of tuition money as well. All right. So we want to see the experience and we want to make sure that everyone coming in is going to be successful. What qualities do you see in candidates thriving in an advanced standing program at Temple? Be open. We know you're dentists. We respect your history and your past and where you come from. But you're trying to be molded into a different type of dentist. Be open to learning. If you come in and you know it all, well, then you don't need us and we don't need you. If you're not open to learning, the committee is not going to be open to you. And the best students are the ones that say, I want to know more. I want to learn differently. I want to understand a different way of performing dentistry. That's a great question. Thank you so much. How do I make up for a low GPA? Listen, I'm not going to tell you to go do dental school again. It is what it is. We're going to take our standards and we're going to go with it. And if that's something that you've learned in this conversation that Temple might not consider you based on your ECE evaluation, then Temple might not be the school for you. And that's okay too. But that's where all of you have to decide, what schools am I competitive at? And what am I going to do to make sure that I can get an opportunity at those schools? Good question. Thank you. Who is your best candidate for advanced standing and what is their strong characteristics? They're personable, they're knowledgeable, they're good with their hands, and they want to learn. Are we able to email the school to find out about our status? No, you don't have to email the school about your status. We're telling you about your status right now. That's what this session's all about, to tell you where you're at. The committee's waiting to determine whether they want to invite more people or not. We will tell you what that future status looks like when it's updated. You do not need to apply separately for the 3-year program. I want to ask if the MPH degree or healthcare management experience is preferred. No, we would prefer you to be chairside. We at Temple. That could be very different at the other schools that you're applying to. You need to balance that. I don't know what that looks like. Okay. Does a master's in oral sciences from the US considered by Temple be a plus point, similar to the MPH? We're looking for experience. We want to know that you're good with your hands and that you want to be a competent clinician. Does Temple operate on a rolling basis? Yes, we do. Do schools get INBDE scores if you put them in CAAPID? Yes, we do. How much value does the admissions committee place on applicants with 3 to 4 years of research experience? They don't. Research is great and it's needed. However, Temple's looking for people with with hands-on experience. Students at Temple will be required to do research in order to graduate. It's a requirement. But from an application standpoint, that does not give anyone an advantage or a disadvantage if you have not done research. Does the committee value US assisting experience more or preceptorships in academic settings? Listen, if you're chair side, it could be either. Some preceptorships allow you to be chair side, some don't. But we want to see you chair side in general. It's not a mix, it's not a match. Be chair side. Have instruments in your hand, work with patients. That's what they're looking for. What is your recommendation for an international student who has a GPA lower than 3? Well, again, lower than 3 is not the end all to be all. It could be as low as a 2.4 if everything else matches. But again, the experience is going to be important.